All right. Hello, everyone. Let's get this started. Last session, we started the conversation about the stateless versus a stateful. We talk about the a few objectives that we want to achieve by the end of this module. We want to learn about the session and state. One of the very important features that we are going to work with the Streamlit. If you interact with the Streamlit, you will notice that it forgets everything after you rerun the page or refresh the page. It doesn't remember anything. So far, probably you haven't noticed it for different reasons. One of the reasons was that we try to persist the data, record the data in a JSON file, and then load it up in the application and started using it. And that kind of gave you an idea that actually like we remember information, but in fact, you will see that a Streamlit doesn't remember anything unless you record the information that you want the application to remember after every rerun, and then use it throughout the application. We want to learn about rule-based routing. A simple approach to make sure that we can create multiple page applications. It's not about creating multiple HTML files, multiple pages, but in fact, with within one file, we can create multiple pages and multiple views or UIs, and then check them given the state of the application. For example, I want to say if the user who is logged in is the admin, you're going to show this dashboard. If the user who is logged in is the instructor, you're going to show the other dashboard. So how do we do that? Simply with a simple if and else. But even that requires us to remember who is logged in. And that goes back to understanding ST session state. And the idea of the state-driven navigation. We want to navigate the user through different pages, given where the user is currently or where the user is heading. But again, you have to remember who is user, where is the current page, where is the current UI, and then where it's heading, moving to the next page or coming back to the other page. So everything depends on one thing that we remember. We remember the prior state when we are moving to the next state. These things need to be repeated a few times, and you're going to do that and go over this topic a few times. An example is that think about it in this way. That a customer goes to a cashier and says, "Hey, I want a coffee." The cashier turns back to make the coffee and then turns back and then asks, "What can I get you?" The cashier doesn't remember that the user or the customer asked the cashier to make a coffee because it doesn't remember what happened in the past. So we need to remember it some way. In a Streamlit, we create a notebook and we write everything we want to remember in it. Just one notebook. One notebook that records everything that we want to remember during that session or that during the period that the user is using the application. Last session, we talked about let's set up the initial part of the application, imports, setting the page configuration, loading the data, we talk about adding the login, and then we also mentioned the idea of setting up the keys for the widgets. Then we created the registration UI as well. This was the UI that we created last session. We haven't implemented correctly. You don't want to see the login and registration in the same page. But here the focus is not on the UI design, it's on understanding the idea behind the fact that the Streamlit doesn't remember anything. And we need a way to remember things. If you want, I can also review one thing that we talked about the buttons, just in case you're here. The buttons, we said you have multiple options for the design of these buttons. You can see the size of the button is exactly the size of the text. If you want to change it, you can go to the button here, the login button, and then add a type. And then you have three options: primary, secondary, and preferred. This one I will choose a secondary. This one change the color of the button. This one will change the color of the button. If I set it to primary, which one? What's the color? Let me see which one was the color. Okay. The primary has a color. So if you set it to type the primary, primary has a color, and we'll set it to primary. If you want to change the size of the button, you can use the other one, use container width and set it to true. Can use user container width and set it to true. Yes. Here. So user container width, when it's set to true, it will expand the button size to the exact area that the button exists in. Here, if I go back to the browser and then rerun, okay, we can see that the button is expanded to the area, to this area. So the size is contained the same exact container. Now let's see what it means when we say a Streamlit doesn't remember anything that happened in the past. Here I have the user, a user recorded. I'm going to attempt to log in. I'm going to attempt to log in. Let's track what will happen after we did that. Oh, I think I put the wrong. Yes, the password was the other one. Okay, it says welcome back. You logged in, and then it disappears. It disappears, and then that's it. It doesn't remember that we logged in. How do I make sure that it actually it's not something relevant to something else? Because you might say, no, it knows it is logged in. You're seeing that because st.rerun. You rerun it, and then the message gets disappeared. That's why you don't see it. That's why you don't see it. I'm going to test that some way. How do I test that? This is a test. You don't need to add it to your code. I will only add it to my code for a test quickly, and I will remove it. I will add a markdown here, and oh, okay, flag matter. Flag is false. st.markdown. and F flag. And then let me show you this. We are going to change the flag to true here and change it. What I did, I want to show you exactly what happened. So what I did, I created a flag initially is false. If I click on the button, it has to change the flag to true, and then print it out, and then it will rerun. If it happens, then it's still here. I should be able to see the same thing. Now it's hidden. If the flag is changed and if it remembers it, here's the thing. Okay, here's the thing. Here I'm going to change the flag. If it remembers that when I rerun, it will still needs to print here the current flag state. So just to make sure, I'm going to remove these codes. I don't want to keep them. I'm just showing you what we mean by a Streamlit forgets things. I'm going to rerun this. So flag is false. Okay, it shows you the flag is false, and it shows you the flag is false here. Okay. I will click on log in. And then if it runs, when it run, it changed the flag to true, right? But I go back and it is still is showing me false. It shows me that the value of flag didn't change, but in fact changed. And then the page got rerun and it forgot what was the recent value of that flag. The idea is that every time a streamlet, now we can get rid of these flags. I hope it kind of gave you an idea what we mean by remembering things and forgetting things. Okay, now I can remove this to line 2. Every time a streamlet sees the code st.rerun, what it does, it goes back to the top of your code and it starts running down every time. If it is like 200 lines of code, does the same thing. Every time it destroys your app and then again creates it. And in every attempt, forgets what happened in the past. So in order to remember what happened in the past, we need a notebook that records the changes. And then the next time the application reruns, it checks the dictionary to remember what happened in the past. It will check the notebook to see what we recorded in the past and then uses that as a type of a memory. So we are creating a memory. Now let's see how we create a memory. Right, we talk about this. Okay. How do we create a memory? We create that memory using a st.session underline state. This is our notebook. That's one notebook. You have one notebook in SQL, and you're going to record everything that you want to remember after every rerun in that notebook. So st.session and state. What's a st.session and state? Look at this here. For example, here I have st.session and state logged in equal to false. If I hide this part, what do you see here? Does it look like a dictionary? This part, session and state, inside the key and then the value. That would be the same practice you do when you're creating and look at a recording a value into a dictionary. So basically, that's the case. It creates a dictionary and then it creates the keys and then the values. And every time it reruns, it checks the notebook to remember if something was recorded, if something exists in the dictionary. This part, when it checks if logged in, not in session state, it will check whether this flag, this key, exists and initialized in the dictionary. If yes, it will move on. If not, it is going to create a key in the session state or in our dictionary. It will initialize that with a value and then just moves on. How do we use it later? Next time the user logs in, we're going to change the logged in to true. That way, when we run it, the application checks this if the logged in, not in session state, and says, no, it's in the session state. So I will remember that the user is now logged in. I remember that the user is logged in. The first step is to set up the main keys in our notebook, the main keys in our notebook. Let's see what are the main keys in our notebook. And we are going to add them at the top of our page. I'm going to put them here. One of the keys that I'm going to add is logged in. This is the key that I will check to when the application reruns, the application needs to check to see whether someone is logged in. If not logged in, that's when we can show the login page. So this is a very important key. When we say not in, we want to see whether the key has been initialized in our dictionary, st.session_state. Want to see if it is initialized in our dictionary. If not, we are going to create that key in the session state, st.session_state, logged in, and then give it an initial value. No one is logged in. In the first run, no one is logged in. So it needs to remember that no one is logged in unless the value changes to true. That's when it knows that someone is logged in. Then it needs to check who is logged in. But first it needs to know that no one is logged in. And this is where it is going to check. If you rerun the page, now you're telling it no one is logged in. Next one, if user not in st.session_state, st.session_state user is none. How about this one? Why do we need this one? Can you tell me, can you guess why do we need this one? Why do you think you need a key and we need to remember something with the key user? And the initial value is none. This is where we will store the user's information who is logged in. So when the page gets refreshed, the application remembers that. The application remembers that. Initially, it is not. No one is logged in. So it is empty. Now, one other thing that we want to remember is the role. In our app, we have multiple roles: instructor, administrator, user. We want to use this to create the idea of multi-page application. So we are going to show a dashboard if the role is instructor, and show a different dashboard if the role is admin, and then show a different dashboard if the role is a student. So we are going to use this later for this goal. Right now, we're going to set this to state.session state row to none. Initially, we don't have any user logged in, and we don't have any role. We are just creating that key in the session state. Let me one more before I forget. The next thing I want to create, the next key is this key. If page not in st.session state, st.session state page is what should we put here? It is checking whether this key exists in the dictionary. If it doesn't exist, means that it is in the main page, in the starting page. So what is your starting page is going to look like when the application comes up? In this case, because we are building in login and password, like login and registration, the main page that we are going to show initially is going to be the login page. So we are going to store the initial value as login. Login. Let's not use the capital case. So simply use login. So let me go over it again. What are we doing here? We are initializing a set of application keys. These are created in the app notebook or app session. And they store an initial value, each one of them. So logged in initially is false. It is created here and then gets set to false. And then we create the user and set to none. When the user gets logged in, that's where you're going to store the user's information. Why do we check? Why do we build it with this design? Why do we create it with this design? We created with this design because we only want to create this key and initialize it one time. One time. If you recall, I said when you have st.rerun, the application will start running your code from the first line of code. If you don't have it, if you don't have this check, what is going to happen? It is going to start from the beginning and then start here and then set the login to false. So yes, that's what happens. Like initially, no one is logged in. But what if the user clicks and log in, you accept the credentials and say you're logged in and you start the information and then the page gets rerun. It starts reading the code from the beginning. What will happen? Again, it will set it to false. And you don't want it to happen because now that the user is logged in fact, the login value is changed to true. We are going to do that in the next step. We're going to do that in the next step. The idea is that up to this point, we talked about a streamlet doesn't remember anything. Doesn't remember anything. And we need to remember it. We need to find a way to record it. So we come up with this notebook session state to record the information. So next time a streamlet reruns our application, has a place to go and check out. it checks out to see if that key exists. If that key exists, let me check its value. If the value is let's say user, then I will show the user's information. If it's not, then I will assume that in the prior state, no one was logged in. It's all about understanding what was in the prior state. Was the prior state user was logged in or not? If it was logged in, who was the person who logged in the application? And Streamlit uses that st.session state to check these values. Now here, we have the login. The user provides the information about the email address, the password, the login, and then we start to checking whether the user actually exists here. We check the user's email address. If the email address exists in the user's list, and then the password. And then the password. If that's the case, then you store the user information in the found user. The user's information in the found user, and then you can use it to indicate that who is logged in. Up to this point, this code will show that, and it will run, it won't remember who is logged in. I'm going to change it to make sure that it remembers after the login. How? Here, when we have st.says, welcome, we said we created the session state keys to remember the prior state. So let's use them. One key is logged in. Here, if we found the user, now the login flag has to be changed to true because now the user is logged in. So st.session state logged in, change to true. How do we remember the user? We created the key for the user. The initial value is none. Okay, that key and the initial value is none. Now we are going to use it to remember which user is logged in. Is it found user? You see, and now I want the application to remember this information after the rerun, right? So I'm writing it to the notebook. I'm writing it to the notebook so that after a Streamlit reruns the application and starts from the beginning, it remembers that this user is logged in now. st.session state. How about the other key? The other key is the role. Found user. We have the role key in the users. We have the role which indicates what is the role of that user. So we are going to use it to record it in the session state. The role of this user. The role of this user. All right. Um, let's go to the end of the code and we add this with st dot sidebar, st dot markdown, side, course manager sidebar. Your sidebar is on the left side of your application. All right. Now, I can do this. I can check if st dot session state logged in is true, then user can be st dot session state user, and then if this is our notebook and it remembers who is logged in, it remembers the past. After the user is logged in, then the application reruns and comes to this line of code. It should remember that there is a new user who is logged in, and it should remember who is that user, and it should show the information about that user. FS string. Uh, if you have, I made a mistake. I used the capital logged in, but I defined the key with the lowercase. That's what it was showing me the error. If you did that, make sure to check it so the key is correctly the one that is inside the application, the one that we defined, so logged in. Going back to the application, I can see that initially it doesn't show anything. It doesn't show anything. Now I'm going to add the admin information and then the password. Okay. Now it's showing me who is logged in. There is a user logged in and the user's email address. It only remembers the prior state because you recorded it into a std session state. It has only one notebook that always checks in every rerun or after every rerun as a way to remember the things in the past. If we record any information we need in that, it will remember them. That's why here I can see that the user is logged in. Question. Okay. Going back to our conversations, we wanted to create this rule-based routing. So we say show things based on the rule of the user. But first we needed to know who is the user that is logged in, and then based on that, navigate the user or like show different pages to the user. Now we can do that. Now we can remember it because we are able to record the information into the session as state. So I'm going to add a few line of code here. If a Streamlit is going to run the application from the beginning, and I want to say if the user who is logged in, that's very important. So you're assuming the user is logged in. If st.session_state role is instructor. st.markdown welcome. The instructor #1. elif st.session_state row is admin. For now, just keep it that way. We are checking if the session is scheduled with instructor. It is not going to give us error because we just created it, right? We created the key here for the user. If the rule is none, then none of them will work and will move on through the page. Here, we don't see anything, so the user is not logged in. Let's try to log in. Try to log in the user, refresh the page, and you see that you're now in the admin page. So it remembered that the user is logged in. In the next rerun, now it is showing the dashboard. There is one thing here. Probably you just noticed that. Why am I still seeing this login and registration? I've already logged in now. So how do I fix it? I'll go here and say else if If the role is not instructor, if the role is not admin, then it means the user is not logged in. Now you want to show everything else. So everything else needs to be moved one indentation or one tab. I'm going to select everything except the sidebar. You don't need the sidebar to be moved. Sidebar is just has to be there. Everything else inside. So when I close the else, this is what I see. If the session state role is instructor, else if the session state role is admin, you're going to show the dashboard, else you're going to show the login and registration. And then sidebar is here, sidebar will be there. You can add different things given the states. We can talk about that later. Let's rerun this page. And now you have the let the user log in and the user is admin. So we're in the admin page. We are now in the admin page. We moved on the login. How about this? Can someone tell me I will add this first and I will ask you the question. I'm going to add a button here. If st.button log out. Type is primary. Use container with is true. Can someone tell me how can I log out the user? That way you will tell me you fully understood the ideal session state. Session state is the way that I will remember the task. How can I forget the past? If I go to the past. What does it mean? What was the past? The past was this, right? This was the past. This was the initial values. These are the initial values. These are like where everything is started. So if the user logs out and I want to forget things, just means that the values have to go back to where how they start, right? That's it. If the user clicks on st.button logout, st.spin st.spinner logging out, and then add a colon, and then st.session state, one at a time. What was the first one? Logged in. This should go to false. Next, st.session state user. If logged out, this should go to none. st.session state. What was the other key? Role. Role should go to none. One more thing, st.session state page should go back to log in. Not the login or login together. If you notice that I haven't used this login, I will use it when you get to the page navigation. But this is the part that you want to return everything into the original state. That's why I'm adding it. So you see this? This is how I remember the past. I remember the past if one after I run it. Very important thing here. Let's keep this code and go back to rerun the code. We have to log out. Are you ready? Okay. Oh, I'm gonna try to close this and terminal and make sure that everything is correct.
Thing is, you made a little typo. You meant to put like just one equals on line 50.
15, 50, 50.
With the roll.
Oh, yes, thank you. Sorry. Streamlit run app day 6.py. So the user is not logged in. We are going to add this user name and then a password. And then it will check with the information. It is correct. Now I'm in the dashboard. Which dashboard? The admin dashboard. I can see that the user is logged in. Who is the user is logged in? Who am I? Now I want to log out. Oh, one thing. The idea that it runs very quickly, so we can notice it. Time dot asleep. 4 seconds.
Wouldn't you rerun it too? But they will
Great. I wanted to actually get to that point. Yeah. Okay, so let's add that time dot asleep so we can actually notice the difference. Okay. So email, password, login. And now please log out. Okay, log out. Okay, we logged out, you're still here. Why are we still here? You just logged out. Why are we still here? Think about it for 2 seconds. Why are we still here? Do you recall we said after every important action, what should we do? Rerun the page. Rerun the page. Force the Streamlit to rerun itself. So as you said, exactly, the user is logged out, but you haven't refreshed the page. Unless you're going to go refresh it, and if you show that the user is logged out, which if you refresh the page, you will see that the user is logged out. But you don't want to do that. You want to force the application to do it. That's why here, after that action, you will say sd.rerun. sd.rerun. You force a rerun. So Streamlit reruns the application. That way, then it starts from the beginning. And because we've set these values, now it remembers the session this way. That remembers no one is logged in. So make sure to remember, whenever you need the app to be refreshed, use the sd.rerun to force the Streamlit to rerun your page. So it can update the information in that page to the current state. I'm going to try this again this time. Log out. We forced the rerun and rerun, and now it is in the login page. Any question? So let's quickly review. Streamlit doesn't remember anything from the past after we rerun. we need to make sure that it remembers what happened in anything before that rerun. How do we remember it? We have a dictionary or we have a notebook here that we are going to record the information in it. So after every rerun, a Streamlit can go and check the notebook and see if there is anything in the notebook. What is that notebook? std session state. For everything that we want the Streamlit to remember after a rerun, we will create a key in the session state, and then we will store the value. And then if we wanted to forget, we will update the value of that key to the initial value. That way, we will forget it. So this is our case, at least for now. I hope it was inspiring. I mean, it was insightful and informative. Make sure to commit these changes. Git add to a stage. If you haven't forgotten how to commit your code, please make sure to do it. Git add dot git commit session state. Session state git push. If you did that, then go, I will quickly put the attendance.